Hello all of you lovely people, Jules here for WhatCulture.com, and as of right now, at this time of filming, I've just seen X-Men Dark Phoenix, and it was, well, a mixed bag to say the least. A rather strange way for Fox to hand over the license back to Marvel and Disney. However, they did try and go out with a bang and have peppered tons of Easter eggs and references throughout the film for comic book fans and mutant lovers alike. So let's strap on the spandex, polish our bold heads, and get cracking. As I'm Jules, this is WhatCulture.com, and these are 21 Easter eggs and references from Dark Phoenix Explained. Number 21, the 20th Century Fox ident. As is customary with X-Men movies, the 20th Century Fox logo, which appears here for the second to last time, of course, has a little X-Men tribute on it. Now, the X of the monolithic statue is lit up prominently and is the last letter to fade as the movie starts. It is a small touch, but it's one that cements the legacy that Fox will have with this franchise. In essence, it's the first film that helped kick off the superhero genre for a new generation, and it's with this ident that it kind of ends. Sad. Number 20, 1975. As is very typical for an X-Men film nowadays, we once again travel back in time to have a look at how Jean came to be under the care of Charles Xavier. Now, we see her traveling in a car with her parents in 1975, and she's messing around with the radio as they go, listening to a song that wouldn't actually be released until 1978. But never mind, there's good continuity there. However, 1975 is a really important date when it comes to the X-Men, as it was that year that the team got their rebirth of sorts in a giant-sized X-Men comic that was the first new story that fans had gotten from them for 5 years. It was also the year that Nightcrawler and Storm were born, and a brand new team launched to the public to fight for the rights of mutants everywhere. Number 19, why 1992? Now, after seeing Jean Grey's backstory and how she became a student, we then jump to 1992, which might seem a little strange at first until you realise that that too was a very important year for the X-Men. And I can sum it up as such. Yeah, it was the X-Men animated TV show, which was pretty top. It was childhood in a can. It was also the year that the What If series produced the story What If Phoenix Rose Again. Honestly though, how good was that animation? Seriously, that really was actually my childhood. Number 18, the space shuttle and the car crash. As you might expect when tinkering with storylines for films, a few changes have been made to the origin stories for Jean Grey to make it more immediate for her character. Now, in the comics, her friend is actually the one that has the car crash, and that causes Jean to lose control and go into a coma of sorts to be awoken by Charles Xavier, which is nice. Also, the events in space are changed as well, because in the comics, she's exposed to a huge amount of radiation which threatens to kill her, and the Phoenix Force actually chooses her because she cries out for help. In the film, however, it chooses her because it's a source of power. Now, you can see why the changes have been made, because it puts more agency into her tale, but it is interesting to see these points referenced in different ways. Number 17, the new X-Men costumes. There is a comment in the film from Mystique when she clashes with Xavier over how much the X-Men's agenda and profile have changed, and about the team's new costumes. She effectively calls them silly, which is a bit rude, because effectively they are, of course, a loving homage to the comics. I mean, the new costumes are drawn from the famous Frank Quitely designs from the new X-Men, which was penned by Grant Morrison. Now, like Matthew Vaughn's First Class, Morrison's new take on the X-Men reimagined the X-Men for the 21st century with snazzy new looks. It has taken them absolutely years, but these might actually be the most accurate X-Men uniforms to date. About bloody time too. Number 16, X-Men Forever. When the X-Men return to Earth after the NASA incident, they're greeted like absolute rock stars, with children amassed with dolls and signs and stuff like that. But there's one sign in particular that stands out. And that is when it says X-Men Forever. Very cool, that. It's actually a callback to a series of the same name that had 3 comics, and the last 2 of which were written in 2009 and 2010 and were written by Chris Claremont, which he saw as an opportunity to continue storylines left hanging since 1991 when he resigned from Marvel. Crucially though, this series was also a free swing for him, his own words there, to kill characters and have them stay dead, because the other mainline Uncanny X-Men series already had them alive. And when you consider what happens to Mystique, it's pretty appropriate. Number 15, Match. In the film, just after Jean has been given the juicy buff of the Phoenix, she and Cyclops attend a rave out in the grounds of the school and drink what I can only assume to be either Nightcrawler's piss or some funky punch, probably the latter, now I've said it out loud. Anyway, in the background of that scene, we see a young black mutant played by Lamar Johnson who lights a bonfire. Now, you could be forgiven for thinking that that's actually just a new version of Pyro, but he's actually playing Ben Hamill, otherwise known as Match. In the comics, Match was the leader of the mutant team, the Paragons, and a pleasant nod to Dark Phoenix because, well, he too has got some anger issues. Number 14, DAZZLER'S cameo. And speaking of cameos by Firelight, it is time to talk about one of the best ones in the entire film, Dazzler. Yes, she finally got her, albeit brief, spotlight. Now, originally, she was meant to appear in Apocalypse and was going to be played by none other than Taylor Swift, but unfortunately, or fortunately, I can't decide which, that sequence was cut. Here, though, we got to see a selection of her powers, of her ability to manipulate sonic vibrations and light, and also her dulcet tones. It's a really nice touch and fits so well with the rest of the scene. Shame she probably got knocked off stage, though, when Jean lost control. Let's try not to think about that, though. Number 13, the Dabari race. When Jessica Chastain was first cast, people thought that she might be playing a member of the Shi'ar Empire who possessed telepathic powers. However, the actress herself debunked these rumors, and now we can see that she was actually playing a character from the Dabari race, a group of people who were displaced quite meanly by the Phoenix Force. Now, in the comics, it's slightly different to how it was in the film, because in the comics, it was actually their sun that got consumed by the Phoenix Force, and that just meant their whole planet was left to starve and die. In this film, well, it just goes through it and blows it up, and it only gets one sentence to get described. So yeah, good bit of backstory that. Number 12, Vuk. So who the Vuk is Jessica Chastain actually playing? Well, at one point, she was going to be called Vuk, who is another character comic book hero who also goes by the name of Starhammer. As with the other Dabari, he was strong and had lived on Earth in human disguise for a fair bit, but unfortunately, we got to see none of this development, nor did we get to see Vuk's other only cool ability, which is a ray gun that turns people into stone. Number 11, are they just SKRULLS? So this was an interesting decision because somewhere along the line, the race of the Dabari became a whole lot more Skrull-like. I mean, hell, even James McAvoy stated that a lot of the film was reshot because when compared to the Avengers, there were a lot of overlap and parallels. So if you're getting some serious Skrull vibes, it is no accident. There's definitely some very close parallels here. Even the third act of the film, which was originally going to be set in space, had to be changed because it was too similar. But we did get that rather brilliant train sequence, so gumsi gumsa. Number 10, Luna. Before Vuk steals the body of a human, we get to see her enjoying a rather pleasant dinner party in her home. But disturbed by her dog barking, she goes outside and just is basically like, what the F, dog? What are you doing? What are you doing, man? But the dog's name actually is of some note to comic book fans, as it is Luna, which is a clear nod to Luna Maximoff, the daughter of Quicksilver and Crystal, who was also the first child to be born of mutant and an Inhuman. This nicely links to the other X-Men spin-off, the Inhumans Project, which didn't do too well on TV. But still, nice nod there. Number 9, Bishop. While he only appears for a fraction of time in Days of Future Past, it would have been great to see Bishop back in an X-Men movie at some point, but unfortunately we're going to have to wait and see what the MCU might or might not do with him now. But at least he got a nod, albeit a little one, in the Dark Phoenix film thanks to a background reference. So when the X-Men follow Jean Grey back to her parents' house and she learns the truth of her father and why she was abandoned, there's a face-off outside in the street and we get to see a shot of Quicksilver sizing up Jean Grey, and in the background there's a truck that said Bishop Power on the side, which of course isn't a real company and is clearly a reference to the classic X-Men character. Number 8, Marvel and Red Hook. So, Jean Grey's hometown is revealed to be none other than Red Hook. During the sequence that I just mentioned earlier, we get to see some police cars that show up on the scene and don't do that much apart from flip over and die. And on the side of them, it says Red Hook SPD. Now that might not mean much to some people, but it does have a huge history with Marvel too, and with the mutant universe overall, because Fox's Legion show is partially set in Red Hook, and in the comics, Hydra has a secret base there as well. And not only that, but Steve Rogers settled there after revealing his true identity to the world in the comics. It is, after all, a veritable Marvel hotspot. Number 7. Genosha, the mutant haven. Yeah, so that little collective that Magneto has got going on in Dark Phoenix, that's meant to be Genosha, the mutant haven. Let's just say it looks a little bit different to that which we're presented with in the comics and has a weird Jonestown cult vibe going. I don't like it. I don't like it at all. Number 6. Magneto's White House attack. When Magneto discovers that Jean has unfortunately killed Mystique thanks to Beast, all of that goodwill that he's built up suddenly drops and he returns to his old ways of wanting to exact revenge. And in order to do that, he's going to need his old helmet, which has been gathering, well, a surprising lack of dust given where he is at the moment. But anyway, he digs it out of the chest that he's got in his home in Genosha. As he removes the helmet from the chest, you might catch a glimpse of some other papers, one of which reads "News cameras capture White House," and then it trails off. But it's definitely a reference to when Magneto attacked the White House from days of future past. Number 5. The last of the first class. There are a few references to other X-Men movies, obviously, with X-Men Last Stand actually being the most direct parallel, though with lots of differences, I might add. But there are also some nods back to First Class. After Raven's funeral, Charles and Beast sit down in a kitchen to share a moment, and Charles recalls the scene from First Class in which he met Raven for the first time. He basically offers a play-by-play of that sequence from Matthew Vaughn's movie. And even earlier than that, when Mystique is still alive, she asks Beast to leave the X-Men with her and refers to them both as the last of the First Class. Sad. Number 4. Selene. One of the more wasted moments of this film actually might have been bypassed by a lot of the audience and comes in the form of Kota Eberhardt's character. Now she plays an ally to Magneto and a clearly trusted partner, and she's actually playing Selene, a truly interesting character in the comics, being one of the first, if not the very first, human mutant, and also someone who's a psychic vampire who drains others' life force to extend her own life. Now in the film, she's psychic, but there's no sign of life draining, and is literally grabbed out of the train and ripped up like a used ticket. Number 3. Is there an MCU gag? When Jean's powers are shown to their full extent, the peace between humans and mutants quickly falls apart, and we hear reference to a mutant prison, which is clearly a reference to the Icebox prison cited in Canada, which appears in Deadpool 2 after first appearing in the comics. Now later, we're shown a power inhibitor that looks exactly like the ones from Deadpool 2, or at least a slight modified version of it. But the interesting thing is that the guards have MCU written on their uniforms. Now surely it's meant to mean something like Mutant Containment Unit in the universe, but it's curious the group already exists in Fox's universe that has the same job, but with a different title. They're called the DMC. So maybe, just maybe, this is a little tongue-in-cheek joke before the deal is officially over. Number 2. Cafe Old Friends. Now, if you thought the ending to the film with Xavier and Magneto playing chess was a sweet little reference back to their previous films and also to their future with X-Men 1, then you might have also noticed something that was so on the nose that it was so goddamn cheesy, because the cafe that they're sat at had the name Café Les Vieux Compagnons, which is clunky French for Cafe of Old Friends. And when you realise that, it is so on the nose, it's almost like it punches through to the other side. And number 1, the Jean Grey School for Gifted Youngsters. At the very end of the movie, after Jean Grey has seemingly sacrificed herself for her friends and the survivors return to the X-Mansion to teach the next generation of mutants, Charles Xavier retires to obscurity, along with a suggestion that maybe fame was going to his head and he needed to step away. And this is further shown with the renaming of the school to the Jean Grey School for Gifted Youngsters. No such love for Mystique. Anyway, it's a nice nod to the comics, which also uses that name when Wolverine reopens the school as the Jean Grey School for Higher Learning. It's a nice little touch, throws all of the stuff that we built to the side and just says, yeah, it's not about Xavier anymore, it's about Jean Grey. Although they still go by the name of the X-Men. There we go, those were 21 Easter eggs and references hiding in X-Men Dark Phoenix that I have now explained for you lovely, lovely people. But before you go, My friends, we can just basically take a life lesson from the X-Men, which is all about acceptance and not sure if you belong to social circles. And I just want to say to you, whatever you're getting up to today, whatever your walk of life, I hope that you succeed at it and do bloody well, because you know what? You deserve love, happiness and support. And if you're struggling with all of that, then remember, you can speak to people. Friends, family, there are professionals in the support industry as well. People care what you think and they care about you. Trust me on that. And if you want to chat about this or anything else, then you can follow me at RetroJ with a 0 over on Twitter. And until then, my friends, you have been awesome. Never forget that. And I'll speak to you soon. Bye.